if I'm trying to get bigger so that I can feel good and be like, yeah, I'm the biggest farm around and I grow so much food, that's just an ego trip. And it actually doesn't make me happy, because then I would be running a farm a size that didn't feel good to me, and I'd feel pressured that I have to be something I'm not, because that's what culture idealizes.
What does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit in that? We tackle those questions and others in the School of Financial Freedom podcast. We talk about the role of money in our personal growth and spiritual liberation, the concrete math of budgeting and saving and investing, and how all this relates to the life you were meant to lead. Each episode is an interview with a former student of my online course, Financial Freedom 1, where they explain their favorite lesson and years later, what financial, behavioral, and spiritual impact it had on them. I'm Douglas Soy, founder of School of Financial Freedom, and your host. Glad you're here. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to have Emma here with us today, because Emma's a special student of mine, because she's definitely one of the youngest people who've ever taken financial freedom. And both on a philosophical level, because you learn habits and behaviors very early in your life, and on a practical level, because you can accelerate into the miracle of compound interest earlier. Learning all this stuff as young as you can makes you accelerate into financial freedom faster.
Hello, I am Emma Dotta, and you're listening to the School of Financial Freedom podcast.
Super excited to have you here, Emma.
Thank you so much, Douglas.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and when you took financial freedom.
Okay, let's see. I took financial freedom back in 2020, so I was 20 years old. It was the winter. And then, I was living up in northern Idaho, where I currently live now. But I was not on the farm that I'm at currently. And now I live and work at a farm in northern Idaho, and I've really appreciated the lessons and things that I've learned through financial freedom. And I'd say the biggest thing is just the awareness of my money, and then the tools that you provide. And then I'm excited to talk about this lesson, because I still, to this day, I keep it in mind.
Awesome. Well, you've chosen lesson 2.8, which is starting to think about reducing spending and the hedonic treadmill. First, before we even start there, where were you about money before you took the course? What did you know about money? What did you think about money?
Yeah, I had lots of spreadsheets. I love tracking my expenses. So I was always very aware of money and saving. I'd say I had a very almost miserly relationship with money, where I was very aware of it. I tracked it. I didn't spend it much. And then currently, when I was taking the course, I actually was not really making that much money. I was losing money. And so I definitely, up until that point, I had never made much money. It's just, I would say money flowed in and out, but in very small quantities. And I was only 20, and I didn't go to college. So I wasn't working those type of jobs where I guess you can get more money. I was doing farm internships and kind of, doing doing more trading. So the money wasn't as involved. I wasn't paying rent and then getting paid for the work. So it was definitely a beneficial way for me to begin my adult life. And looking back, I can see, how helpful it was, especially in reducing housing costs. But that was my relationship with money. Very aware of it, but pretty stingy with it. And then, my dad, he was always into talking about money and stuff like that. So I didn't know much about investing and so forth, but my dad was in real estate, and he would talk. He loved business, so those were things I kind of heard growing up. And I feel very grateful for the money knowledge that I was given from my family. My dad would always like do his own taxes, and so he helped me learn how to do that and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, you chose lesson 2.8, which is about thinking about reducing consumption. Why did you choose this lesson before even we go in?
Well, it's kind of ironic because for me, I feel like one of the biggest lessons I've seen in my life is that I need to increase the money coming in rather than decreasing the spending. I've always lived a pretty frugal, simple life compared to most Americans. The reason I chose this this lesson is because still to this day, I think about how specifically housing is the largest percentage cost of your budget and what I spend. And that really stuck with me, how I can impact my financial life in the spending area the biggest if I decrease the largest percentage cost. So yeah, I'm not going to save that much money if I'm like, look at, I didn't, go out to eat once this month and I never bought a coffee, but I'm spending $3,000 on housing. Like that's just, yeah, that's inefficient. And then it actually will set myself up for disappointment if I'm nickel and diming things like that. But I'm not saying, how through my lifestyle could I reduce food and housing costs through the choices that I make? So that was my main inspiration for choosing this lesson, because that stuck with me. And then I also use that too in my business and how I think about those expenses as well.
Ah, super interesting. Well, okay. Well, let's start with the lesson. You started talking about how it's
Mm-hmm.
affected you, but let's talk, what's in the lesson?
So basically in the lesson, you learn about, well, first of all, the hedonic treadmill, basically how we adjust our happiness levels to kind of what we have. So a study was done where people who won the lottery, and then there was other people who became paralyzed or were paraplegic, and within like a couple months, they kind of returned to the same level of happiness before that event, which is huge because then you realize that's why when you buy the new car or get the new experience, then it ends, or now you have a car and then a couple months later you're needing something more to give you that boost and that excitement. So in that lesson, we learn about that. And Douglas also shares about how he has chosen to go about reducing his expenses through not buying expensive cars and being mindful of your housing cost. Because we also learned that the three largest expenses in everyone's budget is, first of all, housing, and then food and transportation. So you can reduce your spending the most by reducing those areas, because then the other expenses, buying some clothes or other shopping that you do, or that is percentage wise much smaller in your budget. So we learn about that. And then we also learn, just about budgeting with that in mind, and thinking about like if we're going to have children and what that's going to cost and where we want to live to do that, and just being really mindful of all of that, and realizing that those short-term expenses, or the short-term pleasure that we get from those expenses of purchasing a fancy car, don't really give us lasting happiness. And so thinking about how we can structure our life so that we have more long-term happiness and pleasure and well-being, and realize. And then I love what you say, Douglas, too, about what are the areas we talk about in the lesson. What are the areas in our lives where if we trim off some expenses, it actually doesn't give us any pain or decrease our happiness? Because we also need to look at what are the expenses that we're just kind of spending, but then really it's not increasing my overall happiness at all. And many expenses we can actually not, we can trim off and not make those expenses anymore. And we actually don't really feel pain or much sadness. And if you do, you also will readjust to that if that's your commitment and what you want to do. So if you're used to having some sort of stimulation through, let's say traveling a ton and trying to get all these new experiences, and then you actually tap into the emotional need that you're trying to fill, that addressing that emotional need might be a way more cost effective way to increase your happiness than trying to go on all these crazy adventures when, yeah, at the end of the day, it's not the adventure that you're looking for. It's the fulfillment inside yourself.
It's interesting. You're bringing up a couple good points here, Emma. Like, first of all, is there anything that you've noticed that you buy to fulfill emotional need?
Oh, definitely. Like, and that's another thing about this lesson too. It has me think about my expenses, about the why behind my expenses, Definitely, like, I've been wanting to buy clothes recently and update my wardrobe. And because there's my pants that are just, kind of getting old, falling apart. And and definitely I have felt like this dissatisfaction around my clothes and wanting to my clothes to be like an expression of myself. So yeah, I can definitely see it's like I'm wanting to buy these things so that I can have this image that has me feel self-expressed. And so not judging that as good or bad, it's nice to have that awareness that that's what I'm looking for. And for an example, I spent last year, I bought 2 crop tops. They were each $77. So I spent for me, that's a bunch of money on like 2 articles of clothing. And they were like natural dyed and natural fibers and all this stuff that I value. And part of me was like, oh my gosh, Emma, you're spending all this money. Is this really going to increase your happiness? And it did. So that's the cool thing about having this awareness. I love those crop tops. And like, that was some of the best money I've spent because every time I wear them, I feel good. I feel happy. I'm like, and their quality and they're going to last because I'm someone who I like to wear. I don't have that many clothes, but I like them to be quality. And then because I wear them a lot, So that was an example of I can see something that I'm trying to fulfill in my life and that those purchases actually brought that to me. And then there can be other purchases where I'll realize I'm looking for some sort of high or feeling happy. And I don't know, I spend money on going to some event. And then I'm like, I really didn't even like that. And I didn't really like the people there. And that was a waste of my time and money. So I think that's something where I've grown into, instead of judging these things that I'm trying to fulfill, it's actually being strategic and saying, and aware and saying, did this actually give me the happiness? And in the case of spending $77 on, a crop top, that did. Like, that was some of the best spent money. So that's how I've seen, one of the areas I've seen that play out in my life.
I love what you're saying because there are two things here. Number one, you get to choose, right? And knowing your intention behind the purchase allows you actually value your purchase, right? Like, as you know, like gratitude and appreciation are the things that actually make you feel wealthy. And the fact that you actually care about these 2 crop tops make them actually worth the experience of buying them.
Totally. Yeah, I love how you put that. I haven't completely thought about it that way, but it's so true. Like, and now every single time I wear those crop tops, I am filled with gratitude because it was an intentional purchase. And
That's
then,
awesome.
yeah, then I actually realized, like, because if I'm making these, for me, I think that's also why I like to I start feeling a little stressed if I haven't checked in with my finances and seen how much I've spent, because that intentionality around it, when I don't know, I feel kind of out of control and like I'm unable to actually be present with the things that I'm putting money towards in my life. And so, yeah, that definitely, I love that. It totally makes me more grateful. And then it has me realize I don't need 20 crop tops. I actually just needed 2. And I was completely satisfied. I could see if I was unaware, I'd be like just continually buying more and more stuff that I didn't really like. So, and that's, I think also it cultivates a relationship with ourselves as well, because we have to know what we want, what makes us happy, and everything's a continual discovery too. So like how you said in this lesson, you find the things where if you start spending less money a month on, let's say, your food bill, what are the things that you find, oh, I can spend less money on and I'm totally fine. In fact, I don't miss it. And that's really empowering, because then you're getting to know yourself, and then you know ultimately what you need for financial freedom, because you get to see what actually works in your life. So that's been almost a big thing for me, is like, instead of reducing my spending, because my spending is pretty low, it's actually recognizing the value that money does bring into my life, that it does bring me things that do have me feel happier and live a better life. And it's almost like having that awareness of your budget can also help you to even spend more on the things that actually give you pleasure, you know?
The other thing that you're bringing up is, in the language of nonviolent communication, money is a strategy to fulfill emotional needs, right? And once you realize it's a strategy, you can also think of other strategies that could fulfill that emotional need.
Yeah, totally. And I was also thinking, as I was reviewing this lesson, how, I mean, in some ways, I guess it's intentional, but I've structured my life in such a way where, yeah, I'm getting my needs met through community, through working with the land, through where I live, my lifestyle. And in many ways, I've done it so that I don't have to spend as much money to get all those things. Like, I live and work on a farm. Um, I rent a small and totally adequate and like the perfect square footage house for 2 people. And I rent it with my roommate, my friend, Mariana, and it's right there on the farm. There's 2 walk-in coolers attached to my house full of food that I've grown on the farm, and the business is paying for that. So like, also the business pays for my propane. It's like for my electricity. And then also there's a micro dairy on the farm as well. The people who I lease the land from, they have cows. And so we trade veg for milk. So there's no money there. And I get eggs. They have eggs. And then I buy like bulk local beef. And so I have a freezer full of beef. And it's just like all these needs of mine are met through how I've chosen to structure my life. And I can see that now looking at my life, like, oh, yeah, I've made it so that my food bill is very low, because, and a lot of that was intentional. I realized, oh, I really value high quality, well-grown food, and I don't want to pay for it. So I'm just going to grow it, and then I will have it. So yeah.
Well, I love the metaphor. Well, you're talking about it literally, but my friend Jimmy Marsh, who is a pastor, has a metaphor about sort of our shallow materialistic society, which is we're gorging ourselves on poor quality food. And there's no wonder we're still hungry, right? And the things that we really are seeking, community, connection to nature, high quality food, because we're not getting those, we're trying to find poor substitutes. And somehow you figured out very early in your 20s that, your primary satisfactions are these things: community, food, and nature. And you've been able to essentially supply them for yourself.
Yeah. And I would also say, with especially with the course, like going through your course, it also had me realize money is an important thing in my life. Because it's almost like I grew up in I mean, this kind of talks about like money scripts and so forth, but I grew up in a home where it's like material goods were frowned upon. It was like those shallow people, these Americans, like it was almost like we saw the insanity of our culture, right? But then we just judged it, and it was like, so I don't need any of that. And like, we're just so simple and we don't need much. And so I'm really grateful for the connection that it did create for me with nature, community, realizing like relationships are about the most important thing, and they have me feel fulfilled. And then it also, though, didn't highlight the fact that money is a very great thing to have in your life, because it can get you those things and it can be a tool. So yeah, I also think in context of this lesson, like in a way you're budgeting so that your needs are met, and it's finding what your needs actually are and tapping into that. Like how you were saying, oh, it's actually, I don't need more and more and more junk. I actually might need two $77 hand dyed crop tops. I don't need 20 Walmart crop tops, you know? And also I will say I was also thinking about satiation, and I've been on a journey of intuitive eating. That's definitely how I thrive. And a big part of that is trusting your body and letting it desire what it wants and eat that without putting morality around it, good and bad. And I've been reflecting recently on how satisfied I feel around food. Like it was actually taking off the judgment and the morality and the good and bad about stuff. Learning some nutritional science is helpful. And then just seeing what feels good in your body, and knowing, like, oh yeah, veggies and fruit is good, right? We have a general idea of what satisfies us. And then I'm at a point where I feel so satisfied around food. Like when I eat food, I'm just like, I can't describe it. It's almost like a fulfillment and a satisfaction because my brain isn't thinking about it. I'm just being in it, and my body's happy and getting what it needs. So I'm thinking about that in regards to stuff. And I think we live in a culture, well, everyone's in the context of a society, and a society tells you what you need, what you want, what you should be desiring, what you should have. Like even in this lesson, it was mentioned maybe in one of the links that you shared. But anyway, how like, or I think you even said it, like without Instagram telling us what you need, look at this new product, we wouldn't need a lot of these things. So it's almost like if we can just strip away the morality of it and say, what actually has me feel good? And maybe even for a time, like for me, I felt like I had to almost spend more money, and I might still be in that a little bit because I need to feel the freedom to be able to spend things on worthless things and then say, yeah, wow, that really didn't satisfy. I don't think I ever need to spend money on that again. And I feel like that's just my idea, that like when we're young, that's the gift that we get to do. We get to try on all this stuff.
Yeah, you get to find out what works and what doesn't work,
Yeah,
right? I love
totally.
this idea of intuitive spending, right? Having a sense of what satisfies and doesn't satisfy. It's funny because talking about Instagram or any sort of mass media, like you will never see a commercial or advertisement for carrots, right? Like the marketing and advertising will only sell you things you actually do not need. Because if you need them, you already know that you need them. You don't see like drinking water as an advertisement on Facebook.
Unless it's some special infused water that we've put the essence of rose and, I don't know, jiggled it around. And it's like, actually, you can just go drink water out of the ground as long as it's not toxic.
Yeah, so you'll never see an ad for something you actually need because all
Oh, true.
advertising is a creation of fake need.
Well, I also think about that in the context of people starting businesses and wanting to market their product. In a way, it's like you're sharing this thing that you're doing. But yeah, it's not a need. Like all the, I don't know, events or retreats or fun clothing things or gadgets, like they're really not needs, but we like to create them as humans because I think we're creative and we like to express that. So in a way, it's like trying to get someone to get it as excited about the thing that you are.
Right.
So, but
Well,
maybe realizing though that you don't, if it doesn't excite you, you don't need to be into it. But it is also hard to be bombarded daily by all this cool stuff that everyone's really excited about. And you're sitting here saying, I'm overstimulated and now I just feel like I'm lacking.
yeah, essentially, the secret of every marketer, I was told, is that they have to convince you with enough sincerity that there's something wrong with you, and then they can sell you something. Um, but it's interesting because you actually run a business, and I don't think you have any marketing or advertising.
I post on Instagram. We have a mailing list. That's the main thing. But really, I inherited I inherited this mailing list from the previous owners because I took over a business that's been going for about a decade, a little veg farm that's being built up. And really, they just got customers by being at the farmer's market, being there for like multiple years, getting known. And really, it was the quality of their product. I mean, that's our product speaks for itself. And you can't buy in the stores what we grow. Like, I've just been so blown away by our food recently. Like, it's fun to be impressed by something that you've grown. I'm just like, it's not like an arrogant thing. I'm just like, wow, as I eat these greens, like these are so nutritious and delicious. I can't buy this. This is why I do this. I grow food that you can't buy it. It's so good. So yeah, I think I hate marketing. So I don't really do marketing. And I've been blessed to inherit a market, really. So
Right.
I think when
And
you start something, you have to still let people know. What were you going to say?
oh, you sell out every time, right?
Yeah, basically, we have hit market cap with at the farmers market. There's just only so much traffic you get in a small town farmers market, but it's amazing. So, yeah, I mean, I think it also comes down to supply and demand. And due to COVID, a lot more people moved here, and so the supply increased. So we were able to sell more. But then that's also where instead of trying to say, oh, well, we're growing more food than the farmers market can sell, let's find more markets. Why don't we just be content with what we can sell and say, great, we don't have to grow as much food, have as many employees, our life can be simpler. Yay. And that's something that is not taught in business. It's like, how can you grow? How can you expand? What's your 10-year goal and strategy? And I'm kind of like, well, I just want to live a stress-free life. So I chose farming, bad idea, but for stress reduction, but I don't need to grow bigger. Like, and that's something I've discovered for myself too. I was all excited, like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then I realized I don't really have that drive. Like, once my needs are met and I feel like I'm living a good life, why do I need to grow? Why am I supposed to create jobs for the economy? I'm like, no, I'm actually doing this to get my needs met. And I don't have a personal need to create jobs. Some other people might. It might fulfill them, but I've realized I don't.
Well, I think you're pointing out something which the hedonic treadmill talks about on the consumption side, which is the previous lesson, which is the question of what is enough, like the Goldilocks problem, right? Like, you need enough to be able to like live a good, satisfying life. Like, not having enough is not a good place to be. But at some point, when you have more than enough, that's actually not a great place either. And you're finding your enoughness both in your consumption and in your labor.
Totally. Yeah. It's like I'm discovering for my own personal life what enough looks like and for the business and in a way they're tied because like I am running the business and doing the business. And yeah, to mention that hedonic treadmill, like, yeah, being aware of instead of just, yeah, running on that little treadmill because that's what people tell you to do, realizing that if getting bigger is something that you think is going to give you self-worth, and that brings back to the emotional thing. If I'm trying to get bigger so that I can feel good and be like, yeah, I'm the biggest farm around and I grow so much food, that's just an ego trip. Like, and it actually doesn't make me happy because then I would be running a farm a size that didn't feel good to me. And I'd feel pressured that I have to be something I'm not because that's what culture idealizes. So yeah, I'm in both your personal budget, in your business, you have to kind of shed that. And I think that's what you highlight too in this lesson, how you're talking about your cheap car that you used for years. Totally functional, totally fine. You didn't need anything more. People might look at it and say, oh, it's old and it doesn't have a cool paint job. And it's like, well, I don't value that. I actually really like that I pay hardly any money for it.
Well, Emma, you've learned something very young that most people don't get, which is a large part of what we do, either we buy or how we work and try and achieve, is based on impressing other people.
Yeah. And it was cool to look back at my notes when I went through the course and answered the questions. And yeah, I got to see what I was currently wrestling with about people's perception or what I wanted. And it's totally true. Like what you said, I can look back and see, oh yeah, all the money issues that I was wrestling with, they're, yeah, it's totally about perception. And in a way, I resisted that, no, I'm not doing this to get perceived a certain way. But it's almost like embracing that, like to bring it back to the crop tops. Yeah, there's a certain perception when you can say, like, I have a hand dyed, hand sewn, ethical piece of clothing. And maybe you feel really good about yourself because you did that. And in a way, it's like embracing that without judgment and then seeing, is that actually a value of mine? Does that actually make me happy? And I've discovered it doesn't necessarily make me happy to feel like I have a certain label, but like the material that clothing is made out of does matter to me.
What I love about what you're saying, Emma, is that you found this internal enoughness and internal satisfaction that is independent of what other people think about you or wanting to impress others. And I think that's something really impressive for someone your age. I'm curious, I mean, with your friends, and you have a twin sister too, where are they on this?
Yeah, I definitely have my friends. I can think of 1, 2 of them who are like going on their own financial journeys and writing intentional money scripts that they want to have going forward. And then, yeah, my twin sister, she also has an awareness of money and budgeting and in her own kind of, I guess, journey of what satisfies her. And when I'm thinking about that, what actually strikes me is she makes more money than I do currently. She's a server and she really enjoys it. And it's like she's found something that she really enjoys that gives her money, which is a huge gift, I think. And it's interesting how then you can have the money and get the apartment and the things that you want that have you feel good. And then what you eventually run into, though, is still the self-work stuff. Like it's still the personal finding what enoughness is for you. And how you talk about throughout the course that working on your finances is just an invitation and a way to really have a relationship with yourself and learn about yourself. So that's what also comes to mind. And yeah, so I'd say the friends, a lot of my friends, they're slightly older than me, but still around my same age. And yeah, they're kind of in their own life creation processes of trying. One friend just is finishing up her master's to become a therapist, and like she's inspired to do that because not only does she like the work, but it's a way that she can then make more money. And then another friend of mine, they're like going to get married. She's going to get married to her boyfriend and they're going to start their own kind of journey and want to buy land. And so they're definitely like finances is a big element of a lot of my friends' lives. Cause we're kind of like starting our lives, but I mean, when are you not creating your life? But I don't know that it ever ends, but we'll see. And then, yeah, my business partner is my best friend. We have run the farm together, and she's currently going through like a financial rewriting. A lot of it aided through the business and having to relate to money differently. When you don't get a paycheck every month, you have a certain system that works for that. And then you're like, oh, now I have no guaranteed income, and then I work and do this stuff, and no one's paying me. But like all this money that's coming in is mine. So that's also been a really beneficial thing. It has me get more flexible and be intentional and bring attention to money. So yeah, that's how I'd say my friends in my life are interacting with money, and they definitely like a lot of interest and intentionality in all areas of their life, and so including money. And I feel really, really grateful for that. I definitely feel though that I'm yeah, it has me feel very grateful for the stuff that I do know and have learned in my life at such a young age. Because like I said, most of my friends, they're all older than me to some level. So yeah.
Well, I think what you're bringing up is that when you become intentional about your money, you don't have any other choice other than to get intentional about your life.
And I would say getting intentional about your life too can eventually bring you to intention around your money because you keep getting intentional about the different areas of your life. I would say, yeah, it's just nice to get intentional about your money young because then it does bring attention to all areas of your life because that's the special thing I think too about money is it kind of is in every area of your life. You know, your food, your shelter, your fun, your community, your connection. Money plays a part in that. Like just going and driving to my friend's house, I use gas. I gotta pay for that, you know? And I also can hang around in circles that are very alternative too, and people who don't make that much money and really have kind of opted out of the money system. And so it's cool to also see how they're navigating their lives and what works for them. And then it helps me better clarify what works for me. And that is actually something I want to share to everyone listening and is from my own personal experience. It's really beneficial to have confidence in what has you feel good. And so in any of these lessons or any like Douglas is sharing what has inspired him and I'm sharing what's inspired me and how it works for me. And you get to find your own way that works for you. And in my opinion, that's the most important thing is, yeah, do the work, have the awareness, listen to other people and what's worked and what hasn't worked for them. Listen to sages tell you about the meaning of life and what's good. And at the end of the day, you only learn what you like by living and doing it and saying, wow, I'm really dissatisfied and sad. And that's often what has people even come to like a podcast like this or courses that you do around finance because they're unhappy with how their financial life is. And so they're wanting it to change. And yeah, I just really want to encourage everyone to tap in. This is really a big invitation, in my opinion, to get to know yourself, to value your desires and your needs and your wants, and actually get in touch with them and see what your body and soul is asking you for.
And that's what really financial freedom is really about, right? The internal freedom of knowing yourself and knowing what you want and what your desires truly are. Amazing, Emma. Any other big thoughts before we close?
No, I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Douglas. And I'm really grateful for who you are and for your course and for you championing me in my life and your support of everyone that you know and how much love you give. So I'm really, really appreciative of that.
Well, I'm super excited for you, Emma, because like 3 years later, Emma, like you have a farm business and you are starting your life and you have a sense of control and direction, which is amazing, right? And so I'm so pleased. So thank you so much for showing up, Emma, and we'll see you soon.
Alrighty. Bye.
You've been listening to the School of Financial Freedom podcast. This is Douglas Soy. Thank you for tuning in to the School of Financial Freedom podcast, where we ask, what does it mean to live a meaningful inner and outer life? And how do our personal finances fit into that? We hope you enjoyed this episode and it helps you live with an increasing sense of empowerment, integrity, and agency in the world. For more information, resources, and to re-listen to this or any past episodes, visit our website at schoolofinancialfreedom.com. There you can find out when the next cohort of Financial Freedom 1, the online course is. If you've enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a review as it helps more people find us and join our community of people interested in the intersection of money and personal and spiritual growth. I'm Douglas Soy, founder of the School of Financial Freedom. You can also find me on Substack, where you can subscribe to my popular newsletter, Money and Meaning. I also love hearing from readers and listeners, so write me at www.douglassoy.com. I'm grateful that you listened, and I hope that this episode has given you hope and insight into taking control of your finances to live the life you want.